Hi everybody, this is Ian Trevethan. I am the Education and Outreach Manager for the Sternberg Museum of Natural History, and I am here at the Post-Rock Museum in La Crosse. So I thought I would pick back up with my discussion about the local limestone and sort of the geologic outcrops that we can see here in our part of western Kansas. So the last time you saw me, well, the last time I talked about this would have been yesterday afternoon, or no, it would have been, what day is it? It's Friday. Today is Friday. It would have been Wednesday afternoon, I guess. We were talking about the Fort Hayes limestone. And I had mentioned that some of the early structures at the fort were actually cut from Fort Hayes limestone. And it turns out that Fort Hayes limestone is a little bit more dissolvable than the fence post or post rock limestone that we see around so much of this part of Kansas. And actually that limestone, that more resistant limestone, comes from the Greenhorn Formation, which is what we talked about, I think, on Monday when I was live streaming from Russell. I showed you a portion of the Greenhorn formation, or the Greenhorn chalk, I guess, limestone, whatever. Words are hard today for me. Just go with me. Anyways, the fence post or post rock limestone comes from that same section of rock. And when we think about fence post limestone specifically, what that is the uppermost layer of the Greenhorn limestone formation. And that is less dissolvable and is better for building materials and other things. So let's take a look at some of the other things that should be common scenery around here. So this is your sort of your basic post rock. It's a post. It's holding up a fence, right? But
Okay, now we can see it.
okay. Yeah, there's a bit of a lag. But then you've got other uses for this limestone. Here's really your classic sort of fence post limestone. That's what I always think of when I think of fence post limestone.
Complete with Kansas weeds.
With Kansas weeds, yes. But you can use it for other use. In this case, this is a tombstone marker, as this is as well. Are these all tombstones?
No, these are just decorative.
So this would be a VFW marker, and this is a Masonic marker, I assume this is the lodge number.
Yep.
So
that was yard decoration.
So this is the La Crosse.
That was La Crosse Masonic Lodge.
Cool. And then it looks like somebody here was a cavalry person in the U.S. Army. So again, lots of really cool uses for the fence post limestone. Can you imagine why they call it the fence post limestone? And one of the other museums on this sort of museum campus that's here in La Crosse is the Barbed Wire Museum. So here is a really good example of fence post with barbed wire on it. So again, this part of Kansas is pretty famous, right? There's a lot of interest in fence post limestone or post rock.
We're right in the middle of the post rock region.
We are in post rock country. So if you live within this sort of
from
general,
about Ford County, around Dodge City.
I guess I should introduce you. So this is my coworker, Brad Penka.
Hello.
He also works at the Sternberg, but on his days off, he basically runs this museum, not just one museum, but this cluster of museums here in La Crosse. So hats off to you. If I were wearing a hat, it would be off. Okay. So he's very knowledgeable about this kind of thing, and I know just enough to get myself into a little bit of trouble here.
So do I.
Okay, great. So we both go out and we get in trouble. So again, this is a really cool use for the post rock. In this case, it's holding up a windmill. that would be used for pumping water into sort of a cistern here. I guess that's the word, right?
That would be a
Trough.
Trough.
And I don't know what that is.
That is a clothesline pole.
So that's for a clothesline. Okay, it's a clothesline pole.
Leaning a little bit, so it's been fenced off. For the time
Man,
being,
that
so
is heavy duty.
That's a heavy-duty fence post.
Wow.
Or a clothesline.
That's what you dry your chain mail on?
Okay. There you go.
And then there was something over here that I wanted to, well, of course, there is the building material. And these are all quarried in a similar quarry. Are there still open quarries that they get the stuff out of, or is that still
Not a
something that's in
lot. There is
practice?
one, I believe, in Ness County.
So Ness County, there might be one. So this is cool. This looks to me like
The telephone pole.
it's a telephone pole. And the reason you can tell is because at the top, there is a glass insulator.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. This would be pretty resistant to the wind. And there's some great fossils in there. Ooh, look at the fossils. Oh, look, there's an ammonite even. I don't know if you can see the ammonite impression. It's pretty faint. But there's an ammonite right there.
Yep.
So that's one of the telltale signs, actually, that we're in the Greenhorn, is these little ammonite impressions. So post rock are pretty cool. And then as we go in here, more uses for your post rock, more water collecting stuff. I like this. This is cool. I assume this is natural, or did somebody carve that out?
I think that's probably carved. Well, the interior's carved.
So yeah, that's a planter. Very cool. So we're going to go in the museum, and it'll be a second here for my camera to adjust itself, because we're going from very bright to not so bright. Actually, my camera adjusted better than my eyes did. All right, and this is really what I'm excited about, is the reason I asked if I could come here and do a live feed from this particular location is because they have a wonderful reconstruction on exhibit of what a post-rock quarry would look like. Now, Brad, I don't know much about these tools. Do you know much about this stuff?
Oh, maybe.
Have you given a tour here before?
I've done that once or twice, yes.
So, can you talk about what some of these instruments are?
Okay, sure. Well, this right here, this is actually, first of all, this is a mock-up of a quarry.
Here, let me step back and try not to fall on my head. Ah! Okay.
And you tripped over a post rock.
Hey, you know what? The last time I was here doing stuff actively for the museum, I ended up in the hospital for 5 days.
We won't go there.
But that's a story for another day.
Okay, this is actually, this was from a real quarry, southeast or southwest of Rush Center. And this is, I think, about a 3,000-pound stone. But when they built the museum, they moved this stone and just basically picked up the quarry and brought it here to La Crosse so that they could illustrate how the stone is quarried.
Well, and there's really an amazing amount of detail here, because you've got your topsoil here that was clearly brought in chunks and placed back pretty much the way it would have been out in the field. This is so cool. And you got some bison skull here and your little rattlesnake.
Fake snake.
Fake snake. Well, it looks like a real snake, but he's just not alive anymore. Is
It's
that?
a ceramic. It's a ceramic.
It's a ceramic? Wow, that's a good likeness. Cool. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead and
Okay. Anyway,
proceed.
what this illustrates is the way they actually quarried the stone. The big thing that's kind of a strange looking wooden device over there, that's a drilling buck. And in order to drill the holes in the limestone, they would, in order to break the stone and to carve the posts, they had
So is that what this is coming?
that's what those are from.
Okay. Cool. And stuff like this.
Yep.
All right. So that's the machine that does that. Let me see if I can get a good look at what it's doing here. So there's your drill
Drill bit.
bit,
Yep.
and that would go in, and you just,
And you set on it
so you'd sit on it this way, and then with both hands.
and turn the crank, and your body weight helped to drive the bit down into the stone.
So you can imagine doing this for 8 to 10 hours or 12 hours or whatever the average day would have been.
Yep. And then once you drill the holes, you put these little devices into the hole. It's called a feather and a wedge. There were feathers and the wedge. But you place these into the hole, and then after you had a row of holes drilled, you would take a hammer and start striking on the wedge. That put the pressure on the two feathers, and it's really cool to watch somebody quarry that really knows how to do it, because they will go through and they can tell by the tone when the hammer's hitting the wedge when it's about ready to split, and they drive it through so they can hear the tone is all about the same along the whole row.
Oh, that's cool.
And once they reach a certain point, they know the next time. They know
The next strike is going to be
the next strike, and it'll pop just perfectly.
Wow, that is cool. The other thing I like is you can kind of see sort of different coloration seams here. This very well could be like bentonite or volcanic ash, just a real small seam. And it kind of takes on that reddish color. And it's always amazing whenever like my mom she's got a more modern limestone house now. I think it was built in the 50s, but it was still using limestone brick. And it's funny to me to notice which way these sort of seams are going on our house, because when I look at it this way, it all makes sense. It's all conformed. But when you go and you start looking at a building, you start noticing the grains and the lines are kind of going in all different directions, because they're fitting it to what works for that building. And my geologically trained mind is like, so.
This is actually kind of what kind of identifies the fence post limestone, is that brown streak through there. And it will also kind of help you determine where the stone was quarried, because the brown streak and this backwards.
The fake nope rope made Michelle jump. Ha, joke's on you.
Okay. Cool.
Welcome to live feeds. People throw up comments and I tend to get distracted by them. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, the brown streak can also be used to kind of help identify where the stone was
You said
quarried.
brown streak.
Yes. Yeah, that's really what we call it.
Working with me is an adventure. Sorry.
It kind of gets more defined when you go up to the northeast, a sharper edge, and it kind of fades as it goes down. So you can kind of look at it and get a vague idea about where it was quarried as well. But that's really the thing that kind of identifies the fence post from the rest of the limestone, is that cool little brown streak.
And people ask me when I'm going to grow up. You can guess what the answer is. So what a wonderful exhibit. This is so cool. And of course, the paleontologist in me is like noticing all these clams. Oh, that is so cool. And there very well might be some little fishy bits in here and different inclusions, all sorts of stuff. So what is this another version of that drill?
Another version of a drill. I think it's kind of cool because they used a piece of the limestone itself to make the weight to...
Yeah, I was going to ask, there's a limestone donut. So does that sort of do the same thing as sitting on the
Yes. Yep.
sort of sawhorse looking thing over here?
Yep.
So the guy doesn't have to sit on it. He just has to get it propped up and get it rolling.
And work really hard.
And then this looks like another variation of the one that we saw first, except this one has, oh my gosh, that could not have been comfortable.
That's true.
Is that really how?
That's a tractor seat. It's like an old tractor seat, but
Hopefully that was not. They didn't believe in comfort in the early 1900s / late 1800s.
Yep.
Comfort was a luxury. That's why they always look so happy in their pictures.
that's true.
Because of this. Wow. So are all of these things on display? These are taken from somewhere. I mean, were they actually?
These were actually in use. Everything, as far as I know, was in use at one time.
So did these come from the same quarry, or just are these
No.
assembled from just different areas or sources?
Several different people.
Gotcha.
This was put together before I was. So I don't know.
This was put together before you were. What's going on here with this?
This is a kind of a miniaturized example. This is one of the methods that they would have used. If you can visualize this being a full post, 2 full posts, they take a stick and put a chain on it.
A log, rather?
That would be a log, yes. And pull it behind horses to drag it to the
All
side.
right. So you got your probably draft horse type things,
I'm guessing.
and they're going to pull that. That's pretty cool.
That was one of the methods of moving it.
Well, yeah, I kind of wondered, how they get this stuff moved out. So would they do more than two at a time, or do you think they would just probably do two at a
One or
time?
two. A lot of times, imagine this being a full post. Once they quarried it, dropped it, they would back their wagon up over it. That was one method. Put ropes around it, hoist this stone up underneath the wagon, drive the wagon to the site wherever they were going to, actually out into the field, drop it right next to the hole that somebody had dug by hand, pull the wagon out of the way, and stand the post up in the hole.
So when did using post rock actively as, building material / fencing material, when did that sort of become sort of less practical?
I would guess around the 20s, as soon as somebody came out with these nice things called metal T-posts or wooden posts.
So, yeah. So why? Yeah, that's a good question. Where was all the wood?
There wasn't. That's why they used the stone posts.
Okay. So you can imagine all these settlers coming out here, these homesteaders, thinking, that they're coming out to a new Eden. And the first thing they got to do is build a house or, set up some pastures for their livestock. And suddenly the question of, wait a minute, what do we build this stuff from comes into play. And this is actually really a testament to the ingenuity of people out here.
This stuff was it outcrops out here pretty regularly, and you can see it. It's really close to the surface, as you can see here. This is about the representation of how it would be, and you see a lot of outcroppings, and these people saw it, and it's always a consistent thickness. That's what's really cool about the fence post, is it all ranges about this 12-inch, within a few inches of thickness. So I use the term loosely, easy to quarry.
Well, my plan B, if you told me I couldn't show up here, was to go back to one of the sites I had scoped out in Russell. And, in this case, it would have been a road cut right off a highway. I can't remember which highway it is. What's the highway that runs north and south? That's
183.
183, thank you. There is a really nice outcrop, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles north of Russell.
Okay, that wouldn't be 183 in Russell, but
It would be Fossil. What's...
that I don't know. I know this is 183 out here.
Oh, okay. Now that goes...
283?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I can't remember. Whatever Fossil turns into. Fossil is the main road that sort of comes off of the interstate and goes through the city of Russell. And then it turns into a north-south highway. But anyways, I was thinking of doing a road cut out there because literally there are shelves in this road cut of this really sort of resistant limestone. And then you get sort of this stuff that on top of it and below it that is very crumbly and hasn't stood up to the elements. That's all about geochemistry. So Michelle is getting her PhD in, I don't want to mess up her specific focus, but it's a lot of it has to do with early Kansas history. So Michelle, correct me if I totally mangled that, but she says wood had to be shipped into lots of regions in Kansas, that they would save the lumber for the house and use the post rock for fencing. And of course, they also used it for houses if they could not get the lumber as well. It was really dependent on how close you were to a rail depot to get your items. Kansas homesteaders were amazingly resilient and resourceful and creative. So there you go. That's a really, really well summed up. This is why she's going to get her PhD, is because she is far more knowledgeable about this stuff than I am. But that's another thing, is the progression of everything in Kansas, I think, from population to the development and study of early natural sciences, building and quarrying techniques, all of that is really in line with the progression of the railroad. So it's interesting because you have towns that were the the terminus, the big depot at the end of the rail line for a little while, and then that rail line would move a little bit further west, and then the next town would be the next big thing, and the town before that would sort of, and if they could find some other way to draw people there or have sort of an industry.
It was interesting because everybody always thought that they were going to be what was called a division point on the railroad, which was like basically where they switched off
Right.
engineers or whatever they
Right.
did. And that kind of helps spur the growth of a lot of communities. And then their dreams were shattered when the railroad went on. And
Shattered dreams. Yeah. So here's some, there's some really good stuff on display here. So this is sort of a variation. I'm going to go down here. This is sort of a variation on what Brad was just showing me with the two logs, or the two posts on a log. In this case, you've got, it looks like a couple of oxen here, and there's sort of a sled thing. What would be in the barrel?
I'm not sure. I could
Would that be your water or your
Probably water.
your refreshment?
Could be your homemade refreshments.
I would think water would be what
Probably
you
water.
want
Would be
out
your
there
own-
when you're
would be
quarrying.
your-
Just based on doing field work out in Kansas, it's so easy to get dehydrated. So you'd want a good water supply, I would think. So that's kind of cool. It's as another variation of that transportation. And then a lot of art is made from limestone. So you've got sculpture going on here, all
Yep.
the way to Native American
Some early tools
early tools, right? Right.
and modern sculpture.
So, you go for, this was a kraut stone. I can only imagine what that was for.
For sauerkraut, for making sauerkraut.
Is there any other kind of kraut other than sour? Is there sweet kraut?
I don't think so.
So just good examples of the utilitarian use of a natural resource. And it's, from early to more modern. This is cool. I like that. Little relief of Abraham Lincoln. And, it's another Lincoln head there. Lincoln must have been a popular guy in Kansas.
Evidently, yes.
I can't imagine why. Maybe it's because he was responsible for making Kansas a state, and we could get into Kansas history some other time.
That'll be the next-
That's
that'll be the
a
next.
whole. So more tools.
These are all working tools.
So we didn't really talk about this thing. I saw this thing on the big exhibit. What is this? This is sort of like a spiky hammer.
The stone crandle.
Stone crandle. Yes.
It's basically it's for dressing stone would be the easiest way to put it. How they worked with it, I'm not sure, but it's just made up of all those little pins. And if you look at some of the stones, we'll go back and show you in a moment the different types of finishes that they
Okay.
put on it, depending upon the type of chisel that they use.
And of course, there's
Fossils.
your fossils. So lots of ammonite impressions. And clams and clam impressions, clam shells, oyster colonies.
Really cool ones there, I think. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah. Lots of different fishy bits, fossil verts and teeth from sharks, and partial fishtail. Of course, one of my personal favorites, some mosasaur vertebrae. More fossil fish over here. So nice little collection of fossils here.
And this one, maybe you can shed some light on the
Which one is that?
Protosphyrina.
Protospirina.
Yes.
It's a big fish. That looks like a pectoral fin.
Yep.
I can't tell if this is the one with notches on it or not. I don't think it is. But this looks like a big pectoral fin. I am not a fish person. This would be a really good question to throw to our paleo collections manager, Chase. He is a fish guy. He would probably be able to.
Because I think this one was either done by Merle Walker or George Sternberg. Well, it wouldn't have been George because George would have been gone pretty much by then.
So
But Sternberg Museum's Merle Walker
was responsible for this.
Big
Yeah,
is what was
you've
really
got that
cool.
frame and plaster thing happening, but you don't have the texture.
don't have have the Sternberg
that
texture, which makes
Sternberg
me
would
think
have.
it's a merle.
Cool. And this is a chimney stone here.
Yep.
And another tombstone. Like that's the kind of thing I want when I'm dead and buried, when I finally do something that ends me. I want you to give me a big tombstone
Well,
that, says something ridiculous.
the problem with the limestone tombstones is when they carve them, they tend to wear. Mother Nature's not very nice.
That's okay, because I just want people like
To wonder who you want.
in the future to walk by and go, wow, some weird dude's buried here.
Yep.
Well, that got dark. All right, so are there any questions that we can answer from the folks that are tuning in live? We do appreciate that people are interested enough to click on and listen to us blabbing about stuff. This is really cool, and we enjoy it. And if there are any questions or comments, definitely throw them into the comment section, and we'll be here looking for it. All right. Well, if there are no questions, I am going to sign off for the afternoon. As always, we ask that you like and share our live feeds. They can be viewed on our Facebook page after we're done being live, so they're not so live feeds. You can always send us comments and questions regarding any subject we talk about. We try to regularly check on those messages and try to answer them as much as possible. If we miss a question and it's a burning question that you need answered, feel free to bug us. Sometimes things get, we could do the Barbed Wire Museum on another day.
We could.
Are you up for that? Yeah, we could do that.
We could do that.
So yeah, we could do that.
We'll pull some natural history.
We'll continue the idea of fence posting a little bit later on, because I actually learned to, what is that called when you put barbed wire on a pole? That you guys made me do that. Yes, I learned how to splice wire once, and then they put a big weight on it to see if it can handle the weight of a cow, and my wire didn't break. I was really impressed with myself.
I think you did a good job.
Yeah, I was kind of slow, but they have these kids that are doing it in like 0.2 seconds, and they do this awesome job. But that was my first time, and I might have been dressed as a stormtrooper. I don't know.
I remember that.
Anyways, if there's interest in the Barbed Wire Museum, I'd be glad to bug Brad some more. So,
Fine. I'll be glad.
woohoo! All right, so maybe.
Sam too.
All right, so tune in Monday. Maybe we'll do it Monday. You free Monday?
I think so.
Okay, Monday. We'll do it Monday, 2:00 in the afternoon. We'll see you then. Everybody stay happy, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.